everybody. Welcome again to RC Underground Radio. We come on the show, we try to have a good time. We kid around, we make it try to fun. But tonight, and to be honest with you, it's going to be very important. So I hope everybody really gains this message because some of the things you're going to hear impacts you as an RC racer, but it impacts your family too for items and products you might have around your house you don't even realize you do. So call your friends, call your neighbors, make sure everybody watches this episode. It's going to be very important. I'm very proud to have Rick Cohen and Amy Scheu, who have joined us tonight on the podcast. Amy, Rick, thanks so much for joining us. Maybe tell us a little about your company.
So we're Fire Suppression Solutions, and we came into business about 4 years ago, and it's really a company that's made up of first responders, so retired police, firefighter, military, EMTs, that just really want to help people and save lives. And so it's a great group of people with a mission to help educate on safety and fire suppression, and we do a lot of specialty fire suppression tools, including lithium ion. So my background is in healthcare. I just came to the organization as CEO back in January, but that's the skill set that I bring. And Rick, why don't you share a little bit of your background?
So my background is I've got 35 plus years in law enforcement and the fire service and EMS. Been a fire investigator and really love in my career in the public safety is helping people but most of all, educating them to make their life a little bit safer. It's hard to respond to a fire call and watch as you stand there, someone's property burning. So we laugh and joke about Fire Prevention Week and month, and now I consider it a year-long program, but it's something that we need to do every day. It's no different than we train on CPR and anything else. When that time happens and that emergency comes to light, we have to be prepared. And the only way we're going to be prepared is be trained and have the training to be able to. So that's one thing I love doing with my retirement and working for Fire Suppression Solution as a consultant is allowing me to share a lot of my skill sets with other people and make someone's day just a little bit better.
Amy, I have to ask, how does all of a sudden that come up? And all of a sudden you end up in this industry?
It's a little bit of a funny story. So my first interaction with the organization is I had purchased a fire suppression tool. That's how I had found out about the company and the organization. My brother had a connection with the team here and everything, and so that's my first interaction. And then I ended up meeting Rick in this process and was looking for an additional business opportunity from an investment perspective, and did not know, admittedly, a lot about fire suppression and the fire business. And I have just learned everything that I know from him and all of the great people that work with us and a lot of the training and education that we do. It's hard not to pick up on it when you're in it all the time. And it's just a really great organization and great group of people. So that's kind of what brought me to it.
So how is the rise of like drones and RC cars and all that, and e-bikes is a big thing too. It's like all these new things coming into the environment, right? And you have less and less people that are educated and they just want it to work, right? They just want it to work, and no one really trains them or even talks to them about maybe some of the dangers. So what are some of the things you've seen out in the field?
Well, the biggest thing that we see in the field is everyone today has to have their cell phone, their laptops, their iPads, their drones, their scooters, and all this stuff. And when we were growing up and kids, we had calculators that had a battery that was a nickel metal hydride, or it may have been an alkaline battery that you used it, you ran it out, and you disposed of it. When you disposed of it, it went in the garbage and nothing happened. It didn't have the energy. Now we're taking those same devices, but we're making out with lithium ion batteries so that we can use it, recharge it, use it, recharge it, use it, recharge it. And one thing that I'm really excited to share is Amy and the team has come up with a simple way to explain to people what a lithium-ion battery cell does. So if we consider a balloon and we blow up a balloon and we fill it up with air, that is the ions in the battery, in the balloon being stored. It's our air. And when we slowly let the air out, we're shrinking the cell down and the balloon goes back to its normal form. What we need to educate and talk about is when we blow the balloon up and we put too much air in the balloon, what happens? It pops. Or if we fill a balloon too fast, the air inside heats up. And that's the exact same thing that we're using, and Amy's done very well with explaining that the battery is like a balloon. Fills up, empties out, fills up. But if we strike the balloon with a hammer or a nail or something, it pops. That's the exact same thing that happens to a lithium-ion battery. And the other thing is we have 3 different kinds of lithium-ion battery containers. We have cylindrical cells, we have pouch cells, and we have prismatic cells. And when people talk about a lithium-ion battery in an RC car or in a drone or anything, they talk about the battery. But when we talk about it at fire suppression, and I'm going to use a cell phone battery, those normally have 5 to 7 pouches inside that battery, and each pouch is its own battery. So when we store the energy and the pouch number 2 starts getting hot, that temperature needs to go somewhere to cool off. So it propagates to battery pouch 1 and 3, and then when it starts on fire. So that's the difference between our battery structures today and batteries of the old days, is they're made to store a lot of energy, give it off, recharge it, give it off. And we forget about when we damage them, or we forget our charger and we stop at the corner gas station, we pick up a charger. No one looks to see what the amperage is, what the input is, what the output is. It's got a C plug, meets my C plug, I plug it in. We could be charging that battery too fast, which then is not allowing the amperage or the temperature to come off of those cells, and it's causing it to start the thermal runaway. So when we see the battery expand, I got people that come on all the time with radio batteries and different things that the batteries expanded, and I'm like, you can't use this anymore, but it still will work. It's already starting to be dangerous, and as soon as we start that danger, it increases the amount of danger every time. So hopefully that was a good answer to your question.
Yeah, no, and it ties right into, I know one of the things that opened my eyes when you and I had an opportunity to talk was you gave you told me about a situation at a hospital, I believe, where somebody thought they smelled something and then one of the engineers or something went to check it out.
Correct. So we had a hospital in Milwaukee where someone noticed an unusual odor. They called the maintenance engineers. They came up, but it was starting to have the chemical reaction of off-gassing. So they took the battery and they put them onto their carts and they got in the elevator. When they got in the elevator, they were standing upright. When that door opened at the floor they were going to, they're both down on the grounds with thermal burns, because even though we don't see fire and that chemical reaction starts, we are starting to give off hydrogen fluoride gas. Hydrogen fluoride gas is 100+ times more dangerous than carbon monoxide. We get it on our skins. We can get thermal burns on our skins. We get it in our lungs. We get thermal burns on our lungs. So they called the fire department. The hazmat team came, and they didn't know how to safely get that battery out of the building without it continuing to be off gas. The other thing is, in a building, a school, a church, a hospital, whatever, the air handlers is now sucking that hydrogen fluoride gas in and is spreading it. So when we talk about fire safety in schools, and I'm going to use the school as an example, I've talked to places that says, oh, if there's a fire in a classroom, we evacuate the whole school. What do you do when there's a battery going in thermal runaway? We just close that classroom down. Why? You're now contaminating the whole air system with the you need to treat that hydrogen fluoride gas worse than the carcinogens in a fire. It's like I said, carbon monoxide, but it's 100 times more dangerous. Carbon monoxide is an odorless, tasteless poison. And that's the thing, even at your RC races and sporting events that are indoors, if a battery starts to go into thermal runaway, they need to evacuate the whole facility because it's a safety issue. Not just put the battery and remove the battery, leave the battery, remove the people. I can replace a structure. I can replace um, a RC car. I can replace anything. I can't replace life. And that's the biggest thing that Fire Suppression Solution wants to let people know, that that's not just smoke. That is dangerous, dangerous gas.
Yeah, I mean, when you told me that story, that really opened my eyes. So let me tell you some of the remedies that RC Tracks thinks we should do, and I've done them myself. I have my own track. I've done it myself before I started to be educated by Amy and Rick and the team. Oh, if it lights up, stick it in sand. That's one of the things people do. 2, stick it in. Oh, I got a big bucket of salt water. Stick it in salt water. But the true way to maybe you could talk about some of those things, but I know the right way to do it is the suppression container that you guys have, and maybe if you can talk about that as well.
So I'm just going to jump in real quick and then I'll let Amy. So what I always say to people is those myths that we talk about there are what's called encapsulating myths. And as you can tell, I enjoy eating a good meal. So if you take a piece of turkey and you slice the turkey off and you put it on your plate and you try the turkey, that's fine. Now you add a little gravy on top of the turkey. We're not changing the taste of the turkey. We're adding more flavor by the gravy on top. That's all we're doing with the sand and everything. We're giving it a false sense of security. We may not see the flames, but it's still having the reaction inside. And I've got some videos, and I can, I'm willing to share with people. I can take a battery and put a little bit of water on it, and that water turns into steam. A battery in thermal runaway, a number to remember, is 110 degrees Celsius. Most batteries go from off-gassing to thermal runaway and flames at 110 degrees Celsius. So when we put water on that 110 degrees Celsius, all we're doing is we're steaming the water off. We're not letting it get inside. And when we use other agents that are called encapsulators, we're not getting inside the battery. We have to get inside that to cool that battery off. Otherwise, we're not doing anything but cooling ourselves. And I'm going to use one of our scientists' greatest way that he likes to teach it. And he goes, well, you guys are from the United States and you have a lot of bars. So after the big RC race, you have everyone at the bar and there's a big party going on, but you turn the outside lights off. The party's still going on inside. And that's all we're doing with putting it in salt water and or putting it in sand. We're turning the lights off, but the party's still going on inside the bar. So that's our little joke between our friends in the Netherlands and us in the United States.
And the practical things that, people might not know about batteries is once a battery starts on fire and it is off gassing, it's continuing to build heat. And as it's building heat, it's doing more and more destruction to that battery and cell. And then it gets to fire. And then so that usually people are like, okay, it's on fire. And now they're seeing that. What they don't realize is that it has a high probability of exploding. Even small batteries have a very high ability to explode. And we have seen it in all the testing that we've done. And it's a violent explosion. And, the fire picks up and everything else, and it continues to give off gases. So the quickest thing, that we have is our Stay Safe bottle. This is certified by BSI, which is in the UK, for lithium ion battery fires. It also does 9 other types of fires. And so one thing that all fires have in common is, small fire is all fires start as a small fire. And ideally with a lithium battery, speed is what you want to really focus on and getting it extinguished as quickly as possible. So this little bottle here will actually do a small cell phone battery, laptop battery, something that's small and has a few cells. And if you can get it right away, it's a few sprays and it will completely extinguish it. You'll see the off-gassing, the color of the smoke changes and it becomes steam. And then it continues to cool it down and it will actually extinguish that battery fire. As a part of what we have found is a good response opportunity is we have an emergency response kit, which includes everything in it that you would need to extinguish a battery fire and make it safe to be able to do it. So Rick is showing that there. So you're looking at my
Mm-hmm.
emergency response kit. It has the respirator in it to protect you from the toxic gas. As a part of it, it has a small bottle of the Stay Safe. It has heat-proof gloves because obviously you want to be careful, picking it up. It has a small bottle of the Stay Safe, and it has a shovel, so a little foldable shovel. You think about it, how are you going to like pick it up, grab it, that kind of thing? You can just spray it with this bottle to extinguish it. There's a 1-gallon bottle of the same liquid that you can dump into the bucket. You scoop the battery up and toss it in, and then it's safe. So it's already been extinguished, but then by putting it in the additional liquid, it just keeps it safe from a transport perspective, those types of things. And one thing you'll notice is when people are trying to use water or a dry chem extinguisher, it may look like the battery has gone out, but then it reignites. With this fluid, it will not reignite at all.
That's great. What we're going to do too in the show notes is we're going to have links to all these products. I think track owners should really take a serious look at the kit.
Carpy's print embroidery and wraps, where speed meets style. From RC race wraps to go-kart and full-bodied race car wraps, Carpy's is the leader in custom designs that turn heads and crush the competition. Want your gear to match your passion? We've got you covered with custom merch that shows off your racing spirit, no matter where you go. At Carpy's, we're more than just wraps. We're your race day secret weapon. Fast, bold, unforgettable. Carpy's print embroidery and wraps dominate the track, own the look.
What do you think are some of the most overlooked practices when people have LiPo batteries? And you talked a little bit about in a cell phone, and that makes sense. And that's probably the number one thing most people have, and they're not charging it right, and they're not using the right thing, and they leave it laying on their lap, or all the crazy things that happen. But what are some other items that would have LiPo batteries in it that maybe people don't even realize that's what's in there?
So we had a really interesting one occur that has nothing to do with the racing industry, but it does because it helps everyone. So they were on their way to out west to a motorcycle ride, and they had their motorcycles, and they took a couple extra batteries and a couple of for their tools and stuff, and they were lithium-ion batteries. And in the transportation, they had the batteries sitting in a milk container, a milk crate. And as they're driving down the road, the batteries are jiggling and jiggling and jiggling, and one of the batteries flipped, and it went against a aluminum can, a can of spray brake cleaner or something like that. That caused that battery to short out. So when I talk about battery safety, I don't care if it's walking up the stairs, if it's driving in the car. We had a firefighter that called. I talked to him, and he's like, I'm from a small town. I don't think we've got a lot of problems with lithium-ion batteries. A couple months later, he called me and goes, Rick, where do you think I am right now? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm in the hospital. I got burned by a lithium-ion battery. And I said, oh, can you tell me about it? And this is how crazy of a thing it is. So he was in his shop in his garage, and he was drilling in a piece of aluminum. And we've all had this happen when the drill bit sticks and the drill spins around, and it hit his leg through his Carhartt coveralls, and his cell phone was in his pocket. That impact caused the battery to start on fire. It got so hot he's like trying to strip the Carhartts to get his pants off, and ended up with third-degree burns. And he said, when I talked to you a couple months ago, I thought you were really talking to a big city, fire department and everything. And he said, no, it can happen anywhere. And he said, now I'm the fire chief that told you it's not going to happen here, and I'm now the victim of a lithium-ion battery. So I like to use that story, and I never like to talk about the bad side. Let's talk about the learning side. And that goes to the battery being transported from the house to the track. That talks about what are we carrying it in? Is there other things in the metal, in the container that could short out with the lithium ion? I had another person that had a radio battery, a two-way radio battery, lithium ion, working at a large music festival. And the guy was taking a new battery to someone else, and he put it in his pocket. And the battery started on fire because it shorted out against his keys. So
wow.
I always say the batteries, and I hate to use this, but I do use it. If I take a lithium battery and I put it in a room and I close the door and I go back in the room in 6 hours, 6 months, or 6 years, that battery is going to be sitting there untouched. If I take a gun, I can do the same thing, and I hate to use the two. But if now I put a 12-year-old kid in there or a 20-year-old guy in there, and I walk out of the room and I come back in 30 seconds, someone's going to be picking that up and handling it. And that's where it gets dangerous. When we mishandle it, when we improper charge it, when the battery themselves are literally, in my opinion, very safe. It's us that make them dangerous because we don't treat them as something dangerous. How many times have you thrown your computer or your iPad or you're on the bed and it bounces and hits the nightstand? That's something. And again, I can talk all day. So I did have a sheriff call me from, and this is pretty funny, from a Colorado correctional facility and said, "Hey, Rick, I was given your name because we have a problem. Maybe you can help us." And I said, "Yeah, what's the problem?" "Well, we give our inmates Chromebooks. And when they get upset with each other, they throw them at each other and they hit the wall and they're starting on fire. How can we prevent that?" And I said, "Take them away from them."
Right.
But what I guess I want to say is, something that simple where we don't think about, throwing stuff or dropping it, how that can cause our cell phone, our laptop to go into thermal runaway. Or just like the kids were doing with the Chromebook challenge, sticking something into that charging port and just shorting it out. So these are all things. So I guess to answer your question in the short version, and Amy can talk a little bit more about it, is treat that lithium ion as it can be dangerous if it is misused, mishandled, or mischarged.
Yeah, there's a lot of simple things that people don't think about. There's another story where, cold in the Midwest, and there's a guy that has heated gloves and heated socks that he puts on when he goes out to snowblow. And he came back in, plugged both of them in his garage. Well, what he didn't realize he did is he plugged the foot charger into the hands and the hand charger into the feet, and they were actually different voltages. Ooh. And they both started on fire because they were overcharging. And so it caught fire in his garage. He didn't realize it, so it was unattended charging, and ended up burning down the majority of his house just from that simple thing that you could never imagine would happen.
Wow, that's it. So if you have batteries on a battery charger, say in your garage, I know of people that say, "Oh, I just keep them on the charger. I just keep them charged." You're way overcharging it.
Way overcharging, exactly, and that can lead to overheating and damage of the batteries. Yeah. There is so much that I didn't know about fire and fire safety and fire prevention. I got my annual healthcare, training pieces of, how you use a fire extinguisher and, basic stuff like that. And it is actually kind of scary when you think about it and you spend time learning about, what fire risks are. People listening to this, if you're charging cell phones and they're on a soft surface, they're on a couch or a bed or something like that, that's an absolute no-no because it picks up heat in that battery and it can start on fire. And there's just so many little things that can lead to big issues. And because there's not a lot of things that will put out a lithium-ion battery fire, like your regular dry chem extinguisher will not work on extinguishing it. it'll bring the heat down a little bit, but it will end up, reigniting. And a lot of people don't know. They think, well, I have a fire extinguisher, I can, take care of whatever. So really the education on the lithium ion piece, and that it does take specialized equipment, has definitely been key for us in trying to get that message out there.
Absolutely. And I know there's a video, and we're going to share it here on RCU Radio, that Rick gave us that basically shows a firefighter, a well-educated, a well-respected fire department. We're not saying anything bad about what they tried to accomplish, but I believe it was a lawnmower that had a LiPo battery in it. And as you watch them try to work through this fire, it just continues to rage.
Exactly.
And then you guys simulated the same exact type of fire, and you were able to put it out in seconds, with the suppression equipment.
So we had a fire in Wisconsin this past summer where they were charging lithium batteries, and it was for a drone, and the battery started on fire and burnt down a multi-million-dollar house.
Wow.
The fire department couldn't stop the fire. We had the exact same scenario in Ohio, where the battery started on fire. They went there with a 6-liter extinguisher of ours, about $8,000 damage, and they went back home less than 45 minutes later.
Yeah, because
right tool, right place, right time.
Yeah.
And the thing is, you don't have time to react. At the time that it happens, that's not when you can go, oh, I need to go order one of these. No, it's way too late. You need to be prepared ahead of time. That's why it's called preparedness, right? And that's what we're trying to do here, folks. We're not trying to scare anybody. We're just trying to make you put the brakes on for a minute and really think about it and just prepare yourselves. Well, I knew this was going to be too much for one episode, and I was right. So we're going to do a second episode next week. So you're going to hear more. You're going to hear some more stories from Rick, and you're going to hear more from Amy as we go through safety and security and things you need to think about when you're messing around with LiPo batteries, whether it's at home, at the RC track, or in your vehicle. Yeah, there's things we need to think about. So really go back, watch this episode, and get ready for next week, because there's some more really good stories and some very important information to share with you. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to another great podcast on the RCU Radio channel. Please like, subscribe, and tell your friends to join the channel for more RC content. RCU Radio. We cover it all.